Hi everyone, this is the second video in my series on the building blocks of music. In this video I'm going to talk to you about notes like this and scales like this. I will explain what notes are and what scales are, and then I will talk a bit about two of the most common scales that you should know about. Alright, let's get started. Notes are some of the smallest building blocks of music. Each time we play anything on an instrument, we are playing a note. This is a note, this is a note, and this is a note. Ha! All the notes I just played for you sounded different because they were played on different instruments, but they also sounded similar, and that is because they share the same pitch. Pitch is how fast an instrument is vibrating when creating a sound, and we also call that the frequency of a note. When you pluck a string on a guitar like this, you give energy to the string and it starts vibrating really fast. And that vibration is then what you hear as sound. If we then play a higher note like this, the vibrations are faster. And if we play a lower note like this, the vibrations are slower. It's pretty hard to see this difference on a ukulele, but if you have a bass guitar or a piano with low notes, you can play a very low note and a very high note and then really see the difference in how fast they vibrate. So these notes on the ukulele and the piano are pitched notes, but there are also notes that don't have a clear pitch. They don't vibrate back and forth like a string, but they vibrate more chaotically. Drums, for example, make non-pitched sounds, and other examples are me clapping or me hitting my ukulele. These notes serve primarily a rhythmic function, so I will skip them here and leave them for the rhythm video. Notes can have any pitch, and we can, for example, make a string vibrate at any frequency we want if we just change the length of the string. But to make things easier for ourselves, we give names to notes with specific pitches. In Western music, we use a system of 12 notes, and they are C, C sharp or D flat, D, D sharp or E flat, E, F, F sharp or G flat, G, G sharp or A flat, A sharp or B flat, B, and then after this we repeat all of the notes again. So after this we have C, and then C sharp or D flat, and D, and so on, until we have another C up here. Sometimes we use a number as well to specify exactly which note we mean. So this here would be C2, and the next C then is C3, and then we have C4, and so on, and also E2, and E3, and so on. We are already coming up against some confusing things here. For one, many of these notes have more than one name, and also for some reason C is the first note and not A. There's good reasons for these, but for now I just want you to hang on and try to remember these names. And I will also just keep them on screen for you. One thing I can explain though is why these notes repeat. After we played all 12 of our notes from C to B, we were back at C again after that. It just so happens that every time we go from a note to the next version of that note, the frequency becomes twice as fast. This A here, which is a A3, is a note that vibrates at 220 times per second, and this next A, which would be A4, is a note that vibrates 440 times per second, so twice as fast. The same is the case for all of these notes, which means that if we go the other way, the A below A3, so A2, is a note that vibrates 110 times per second. The reason why we do it like this has to do with physics. It just so happens that these notes just sound really similar to us, so we think of them kind of as the same note. We have a name for this distance between a note and the next time the note repeats. So for example, the distance between this C and the next C, we call this an octave, or sometimes a perfect octave. We have a whole bunch of names for the distances between notes. We call these intervals, and I think they're quite useful to know. The distance between one note and the next is called a minor second, like this. We also call this distance a semitone, and it is essentially the smallest unit of distance we have in Western music. A distance then of 2 semitones is a major second, so 1, 2, a major second. 3 semitones then is a minor third. 4 is a major third. 5 is a fourth, or sometimes called a perfect fourth. 6 is the odd one out. We call this a tritone. 7 is a fifth or a perfect fifth. 8 is a minor sixth. 9 is a major sixth. 10 is a minor seventh. 11 is a major seventh. And 12 is an octave. You can even keep going if you want after this. So you would have a minor ninth, major ninth, minor tenth, and so on. But you don't really need to remember anything larger than an octave for now, I think. These names, again, are probably a bit confusing right now, but hopefully things become a bit more clear once I explain scales. Alright, so we have these 12 notes, but we can't just play them at random, because that sounds pretty terrible, like this. I hope you agree with me that this does not sound exactly beautiful, I would say. So, to help us make music that sounds nice, we can choose to play only some of the notes. And that is exactly what a scale is, a group of notes that sound nice together. Scales are really important in Western music styles, especially a group of 7-note scales called the church scales. And here they are. You don't need to remember these for now, but just remember that in Western music, 7-note scales like these are very common and very important. It is very common for a song to use a specific scale and only play notes from within that scale for the entire duration of the song. And when notes outside of the scale are played, they almost always have very specific functions, but what that means exactly has to wait until the harmony video. In this video, I will discuss 2 of those church scales, those being the major scale and the minor scale. These are by far the most common two, and I will start with the major scale. Actually, the major scale is only a type of scale. There are 12 major scales in total, 1 for each of the 12 notes. A C major scale is then a major scale that has the C note as the root. And as it so happens, the C major scale contains all of the white notes on the piano, which are also all of the notes with the simple names. Here it is. We have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then we are back to C. And that keeps going on as well. If we now play random notes again, but only use the white keys, it should sound a lot better, like this. Well, I guess I wouldn't call that beautiful, I suppose, but maybe it does sound better. Here's an exercise for you to try if you have access to a piano or keyboard. Even if you don't know how to play piano at all, just try playing something beautiful or interesting using only the white keys. Play some chords or try to find a nice melody and try to figure out what sorts of things work well and what sorts of things still maybe do not sound so great. So I was just mashing random keys, but if you are a bit more gentle with it and don't just play really fast, I think almost every chord you can make sound pretty good. I mean, this clashes a bit, right? But especially if you stretch it out, and especially melodies are really hard to mess up using only the white keys. So try it out. Anyway, back to the major scale. We just played the C major scale like this. But like I said, each of the 12 notes has their own major scale. So I can play, for example, the E major scale, or the A flat major scale. but they are still all major scales. The important thing here is not the notes themselves, but the relationship between the notes. Let's look at the C major scale again, and now pay attention to the distances between the notes. So from C to D is 2 semitones. Then from D to E is also 2 semitones. Then from E to F is only 1 semitone. Then from F to G is 2 semitones. From G to A is 2 semitones. From A to B is 2 semitones. And then finally from B to C is 1 semitone. To make talking about scales a bit more efficient, we often use the terms halftone and whole tone instead of saying 1 semitone and 2 semitones. Or sometimes we even just say half and whole. So if we look at the C major scale again with this in mind, the interval between the notes become whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. And it is these intervals that define exactly what a major scale is. So if we look at A flat major, we see the same thing. We have whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. So like I mentioned, the major scale is the most common of the scales in Western music, but there's a bunch of different scales that are used, like the church scales and even some other ones that you come across every so often. And like with the major scale, all of these scales can be defined by their intervals, which I have indicated here with H for a half tone and W for a whole tone. So with that in mind, the next scale I want to talk about is the minor scale. The intervals of the minor scale are whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. So just like with the major scale, I can use these intervals to play any of the 12 minor scales. I can, for example, play C minor, B flat minor, or A minor. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? The A minor scale also uses all of the white keys. And it turns out that A minor and C major use the exact same notes. We can see that when we look at the intervals too. If we shift the intervals of A minor over and then move the first two intervals to the end, we now have two identical scales. And this is really useful to know. If someone tells you a song is in B minor and you can't remember what exactly the intervals of the minor scale are, then you can think, B minor has the same notes as 1, 2, 3, D major. So, like I mentioned earlier, the major scale is the most common scale in Western music, and after that, the minor scale is the most common. Add to that you can easily convert a minor scale to a major scale, and you can imagine how useful it is to know how the major scale works. So really try to make sure to remember these intervals of whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Okay, before I end this video, I want to go back to those confusing names for all the intervals. Here they are again. The names of these intervals have numbers in them, but they don't count up to 12 like you might expect. Instead, most of them have two different variants, with both a major version and a minor version. The names of these intervals are actually very closely linked to the church scales that I mentioned before. Let's have a look at the two scales that we just discussed and analyze all the intervals in them. Again, the major scale has the intervals whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. So for a C major scale, those would be the notes C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C again. Now let's look at all the intervals from C to the other notes. The distance from C to C is 0. But what we say then is, we say that those notes are in unison. The interval from C to D is a major second. The interval from C to E is a major third. From C to F is a perfect fourth. From C to G is a perfect fifth. From C to A is a major sixth. From C to B is a major seventh. And then from C to the higher C is an octave. Looking at all the intervals now, we have unison, a second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and an octave. Now the names of these intervals seem to correspond with all the notes on the scale, right? And just so you know, octave is a word that comes from Latin, and it literally translates to eighth. I don't know why that one had to be special, but that's the way it is, I guess. Okay, but that was the major scale. Now let's have a look at the minor scale. And let's use C minor for this example. The intervals of the minor scale, again, are whole, half, whole, half, whole. So the C minor scale has the notes C, D, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, and then C again. Now all the intervals are like this. C and C again are in unison. From C to D is a major second. From C to E flat is a minor third. From C to F is a perfect fourth. From C to G is a perfect fifth. From C to A flat is a minor sixth. From C to B flat is a minor seventh. And from C to the higher C is again an octave. Now, some of our intervals have gone from the major version to the minor version, but just like with the major scale, we again have unison, a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, a seventh, and an octave. Now remember that I said that in Western music, the major scale and the minor scale, and more generally all the church scales, are really important. All of these scales have 7 notes, and all of them have exactly 1 unison, 1 second, 1 third, 1 fourth, and so on. So the reason why the intervals have these names is precisely because they work so well with the scales that are so important in Western music. Well, that really is it for this video now. I hope it wasn't too overwhelming or confusing for any of you. And again, you can ask questions in the comments and I will do my best to answer them. The next video in this series will be about chords, which you should be able to click on now. If you happen to live in the Vancouver metro area and you are interested in taking lessons with me, you can send me an email at romejansen.ml@gmail.com. I teach music theory like on this channel, but I also teach ukulele, guitar, bass guitar, and piano. Alright, I'll see you in the next video. Bye!